And we are the Coalition, loud and proud, outrage-born free, civilly disobedient media, broadcasting live on the worldwide Coalition Radio Network at coalitionradionetwork.com, facebook.com/the Coalition Radio, on the mighty Twitter at Coalition_radio, the original mothership at coalitionradio.us. As any listener, or if you will, as we like to say, repeat offender to this show, understands that the American Civil Liberties Union is, well, a central part of what we do here. It's an essential part. And we've been privileged over the last, 7 years or so to have on literally dozens of lawyers who work largely pro bono, sometimes getting expenses, sometimes not, on behalf of plaintiffs for virtually every aspect of your civil liberties: the First Amendment, Second Amendment, Fourth Amendment, Eighth Amendment, on and on, all of the amendments. In fact, I'd like to chide my Republican friends occasionally and say, you know what, there is an amendment beyond the Second. In fact, there's a vast assemblage, if you will, of civil rights that are guaranteed to you in the Bill of Rights, the Constitution, the Declaration, all sorts of fancy places. Besides, as importantly, your right to bear arms. We've even had Stephen Brown on occasion. We're going to be republishing over the next week or so, as we do from time to time, an episode he did with us probably about 6 years ago when he talked about the history of the American Civil Liberties Union. And why are they there? Well, for evenings like tonight. Anyone who's an actor, reporter, a politician, sometimes on the right side, sometimes on the wrong side, is privy and familiar with something called the Access to Public Records Act. And that sounds as innocuous as it gets. In fact, it sounds like just one of those government things that people bandy about. You'll hear about requests were made. And folks who are just don't have the time, the energy, or just the interest in pursuing their civil rights or pursuing an ongoing relationship with their government are often want to just let that fade by. Yet it is arguably the most important tool, if you will, the circular saw, the surgeon's knife, the scalpel, if you will, of activism and civil rights, because that is, as I mentioned in the pre-show publicity, that is the tool with which you get to see how, if you will, take a look back in time and see how the sausage was made, as they say in Rhode Island. How we got to this point, how legislation was, well, either conspired, conflated, or completed. And it can hide embarrassing truths. It can hide embarrassing motivations if, in fact, the government routinely places obstacles to folks looking to use that as a tool to gain documentation, insights, testimony, criminal records, you name it. So I'm glad to introduce tonight someone who we're meeting for literally the very first time. We had just a few minutes to speak with her between classes this afternoon. She was kind enough to come in tonight, despite the fact that she's got a pretty pressing schedule. She's a second-year law student, if I have it correct, at Roger Williams University Law School. Her name is Lindsay Koso. Welcome to the Coalition. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Let's set a little bit, if you will, a backstory, a personal backdrop. You're in your second year at Roger Williams Law. Yes. People are always curious. There's lots of reasons why people get involved in the law. Some noble, some rather mundane. What motivated you to pursue the law?
Oh gosh. Well, I'm one of those cases where I come in from a liberal arts background. I never thought I would be interested in the law or interested in practicing it. But I worked for several years out of college at a museum trying to do advocacy work for indigent populations, and I got frustrated being stuck behind a desk, being stuck in a lab. And so I decided I think it was about on November 3rd of 2016 that I was going to apply to law school. And here I am. I'm loving every second of it, even the COVID parts. And really, social justice is my passion.
Is that come from personal experience, or is that just something you discovered that you found that you could, what we like to say in this show is that everybody's got superpowers. It's just a question of figuring out what they are. Did you decide that was going to be your superpower? Was there a personal experience? Or did you just see life evolving around you as a younger person growing up and seeing the unfairness, the indignities, the challenges of folks who might have less than others?
Well, it's a little bit of both, I would say, because I have grown up fortunately enough with a lot of access to resources, media coverage, etc., that illuminate the disparity between different groupings within our American society. But I also grew up in a household that really fosters volunteer work and giving back to the community and trying to help people as much as I possibly can. I get it from my parents for sure. They would give you the shirt off their back. And I want to be able to apply that kind of social philosophy to practicing the law.
Excellent. Now, it was in your capacity as doing research for I guess the Immigration Law Center at Roger Williams University that you first came into contact, if you will, with as we describe it, the civil and criminal justice system here in Rhode Island, or otherwise known as in the halls of justice, justices in the halls. Is that what type of project were you working on, and how did you come into contact with them in the first place?
Well, so I was working on a project for the Roger Williams University Law School Law Review. I am an editor there, and producing academic content is part of what we do. And I had done some pro bono work for a group called PRISM out of Providence. It's the Providence Youth Student, yeah, you know them, all right, with Shauna Kurland. And I first got introduced to post-conviction relief for immigration. And it's this really sort of fascinating area of the law that sort of caught me by surprise of what opportunities are available to people after the trial is over. That's nothing that you see on TV or hear a lot about in the media, but there are a lot of legal recourses available to people after, say, a criminal conviction. And so part of what I did for Shanna was doing research for that, and I was bit by the bug, and I couldn't stop. And so I presented to the law review as my potential paper topic, looking to make post-conviction relief for immigrants more accessible in Rhode Island.
Interestingly enough, Shauna and folks from PRISM were on the show just a couple of weeks ago here. So we consider Shauna Kurland to be one of our heroes of civil liberties here in the state. So she's an outstanding attorney and an outstanding activist. So, second-year law student, you're engaging with the community. You're doing research on behalf of a project. You're on law review. Everything is firing on all cylinders. And then you met the immutable, the unscrupulable, the unenforceable. You met the Rhode Island Department of Justice, if you will. What happened?
Well, as part of the research, I was as part of the research I was doing for the article, I was looking into a particular statute in Rhode Island law, which is 12-12-22. It's burned into my mind forever, which requires that the court keep a record of, well, let me rephrase, that the Attorney General's office file a report of certain cases that have been vacated, the post-conviction relief kind of cases that I was looking for Rhode Island immigrants, with the Rhode Island legislature. So there's this little subsection E, that says that starting in the year 2001, the Attorney General's office will file these records with the legislature. And so I went looking for them because statistics are great. Who doesn't love statistics? They make a paper so wonderful and concrete. And so I tried getting in contact with the legislative library to see, where do you keep this 20 years worth of records? I'd love to see them, love to read them because they're public documents. No good. They didn't know of the records, and they didn't know where they would be kept. So they suggested I turn to the Attorney General's office, and I got in contact with them. And I was in contact with them for several months, and they were unable to find any of these documents. They could give me rough estimations and say, we think probably in 2018 this is maybe what happened, but there were no statistics like I wanted for the article. So I decided in October that I would file an APRA request, basically to move things along, not to be left hanging looking for these records.
Right. Now, I want to stress, now, in this case, these are these records, if you will, and reporting on this record. Am I to believe that this was actually required on a statutory basis anyway? I mean, wasn't this data supposed to have been transmitted to a variety of end users?
Yes. Yes, it is. So according to the Rhode Island General Laws, Title 12, and 12-12-22, subsection E, in the first week of January 2001, and each year thereafter, the Attorney General shall submit to the General Assembly a list of cases in which a disposition was vacated pursuant to this section. So it's right there in the statute that requires the Attorney General and the legislature to keep these records.
Right. And let me step back for a second, because it's important to take a look at the psychology here. I myself approached the city of Pawtucket just a few months back and submitted a request. And cities and towns, different organizations are giving a period of time which they can research and then respond. You will, in my experience, and I'd love your reaction to this, I have never gotten a response early, ever. If they know the answer, they're still not going to tell you. They're going to wait however many days they can before they will give you the response. But in accordance with that, though, they decided to hit you with a fee, and there is a period of time which if you don't respond with payment of said fees, then essentially you have to start your request all over. Tell us about that part of it.
Right. So with an APRA request, the government has a short period of time, essentially, to spend your one free of charge hour looking for the records that you have requested. And it doesn't matter how many or how few records there are, you get that one free hour on the state, and then after that, you may be required to pay. What happened in my case, however, was when they got back to me at the end of their allocated time, they told me that they had been unable to find anything regarding my request for the records, and that they anticipated at least another 15 hours of research to find the documents, the publicly available documents. And then even after those 15 hours, for which they would charge me $225 in advance, they could not guarantee that they would be able to come up with anything.
So let's then take this issue writ large. You've got any one of a number of good government groups in this state. And for the record, I know my Republican friends who will listen to this, they will point out quite correctly that the former minority leader of the of the Rhode Island House of Representatives, Patricia Morgan, was involved in a similar foolishness, if you will, when they requested a waiver. They wanted $4,000. What type of effect do you think this has, just from your first experience in this, in terms of if you're an ordinary activist challenging this? If you're, well, let's just say PRISM wasn't as fortunate to have you working, if you will, with them, and certainly, you know, the great Shanna Curland, if she wasn't working on their behalf and they just showed up, how likely are marginalized communities able to cough up hundreds or thousands of dollars?
That's exactly gets to the heart of it. That the idea that you could be requesting this much money for publicly accessible records has an instant chilling effect on the parts of the parts of these statutes that require the government to supply these records. Mm-hmm. So the idea that I am a law student, I am very fortunate to have connections through the law school within the Rhode Island state government. Everybody knows each other, and I work at the library, so I'm very well supported, and I'm still having trouble finding these records. So then to turn it to the other side, if the shoe were on the other foot, and say marginalized populations, marginalized peoples who are already having so much trouble advocating for themselves in a government system that is prejudiced against them, have to find the funds, whether it be $225, $4,000, the amount doesn't matter. That is keeping these people from accessing the open government that they're due.
Now, and for those folks who might listen to this or might hear conversation about this and say, well, you know, they're looking for accounting records, or they're looking for, they're going out there and fishing for stuff. I want to clarify this, and you're the expert. I'm just one who tries to play one on the radio. I'm quoting, in a sense, the complaint. One of those laws allows criminal defendants to have their plea agreements vacated if the judge fails to apprise them that a plea could have adverse immigration consequences. Translate that for us, and why is that vitally important for someone who's here, perhaps, you know, legitimately as a refugee, or in my case, legitimately as someone who decided to come to the United States? Why, you know, you talk about chilling impacts. What could that mean to these people?
Right. So this is all in connection with a Supreme Court case called Padilla versus Kentucky that came down in 2010, which requires attorneys to provide they call it effective counsel is the term they put on it. So if you are someone who has come to this country and you are not naturalized, or you are immigrant, you are etc. If you are in criminal proceedings that may have an effect on whether or not you get deported, the attorney who is representing you must tell you. That is part of your Sixth Amendment right to effective counsel. So these records here now in Rhode Island, 12-12-22, this is essentially the same rule, but on the state level in Rhode Island, saying that at the time you are arraigned as a defendant in a criminal case, you must be informed of the effects that taking a guilty plea or a nolo contendere plea, which is basically a no contest plea, will have on your immigration status and your deportation status. So it can, in a very real sense, be a life or death question.
Absolutely. And you know, from my years of watching a variety of crime shows, Homicide: Life on the Streets being my favorite, we all know that very often that folks are encouraged to take the NOLO. You know, listen, this will just be a blot. You know, it'll go away after a while. You can do this, you can do that. Yeah, no worry. Just we'll shake hands and make this go away. Well, that's not quite how ICE or the variety of arms of Homeland Security work, is it?
No, not at all. And there are actually people in court right now being taken to court by the state for things that happened as a blip, whatever it is, decades ago. And now ICE is using those criminal convictions, however slight or not they may be, to kick these people out of the country. With Padilla versus Kentucky, the Supreme Court case in 2010, it was a man who had been here for, I think, 3 decades, and his attorney had said, don't worry about it. You've been here long enough. They're not going to do anything. It's fine. And they were going to deport him. So it's a very real possibility, especially given the current attitude in the United States towards immigrants and towards immigration in our courts.
Absolutely. And I'm going to editorialize for a second. And as I always say in a situation like this is the opinion of station management. It's not the opinion. I'm not going to attempt to place words in our guest's behalf, if you will. This is not the Kilmartin administration anymore. I would have expected this out of the Kilmartin administration and the Attorney General's office. I wouldn't have been shocked. I would have been appalled, disgusted, revolted, but not shocked or surprised. This is the Neronha administration. And for those folks who are keeping score at home, the Neronha administration represented, quote unquote, the white knight coming into the Attorney General's office, depoliticizing it, introducing fairness and equity for all, including those most marginalized around us, among us, if you will, of which there are many. And increasingly, as we go through what I call the plague, there are a lot of folks who are finding themselves in rather difficult circumstances. So for everyone who says this is an illegal immigration issue, it's not. It's a question of civil rights and the Sixth Amendment, that you are entitled to fair representation, and whether it be a representative of ongoing litigation or a representative of literally any situation you may find yourself, whether it be a criminal justice issue, a civil issue, or a political issue, you've got the state's Attorney General's office, who, by the way, the last time I checked, and please, attorney in waiting, if you will, correct me if I'm wrong, is supposed to be the state's attorney. They're not supposed to be the prosecuting the members of the state attorney.
Right.
This administration, and I'll get off my high horse in a second, was supposed to be making it easier. That was the contention, just a few short months ago. And anyone who's been following this for the last year or so is understanding that there's disappointment in all sorts of realms. But with regards to tonight's issue, on one sense, certain parts of the media aren't going to be as outraged because it's not a minority leader of the House of Representatives. And Mrs. Morgan was on firm legal grounds and was doing the work, righteous work, in this case, looking for research into some of the fiscal wrongdoings of the state or the fiscal incompetence. This is just as serious. Anyone who has listened to the show or is a sentient human being understands that there is a tremendous flow of immigration as a direct result of the war on drugs, narco-terrorism, complete, if you will, tearing down of social institutions across a number of states. And by the way, that's to fulfill our drug needs here because we've effectively offshored our drug production to a part of the world that can't scream and yell at us. And yet at the same time, we will make it as difficult as possible for them to find ways to recover. Or, God forbid, try to join us here in the United States where they can be, at least have a sense of normalcy and have a shot at a life because our country ripped the hell out of their society and its fabric. So, I've got to ask you, as someone who's new to the law, relatively new, as someone who's diving headfirst into these issues, much to your eternal credit, what signals does this say to you in terms of, institutionally, what you're going to have to deal with as someone who is looks to be spending a great part of her life advocating for people of lesser means?
I think really I've got my work cut out for me. That there is so much rhetoric right now, political rhetoric going around about change and diversifying our representation and our leadership. And I think that is fantastic, amazing. And I also think that there needs to be follow through. And that's part of what I am trying to do is to hold the government to the standards that it has set for itself. Mm-hmm. So you have Rhode Island with this incredibly robust immigrant population. I think 1 in 8 Rhode Islanders was born in a different country, while 1 in 5 residents is a native-born American who has at least one immigrant parent. It's a huge swath of our community. And so it's not niche anymore. It's people's lives. It's a huge part of people's lives. And so I, for one, am honored and privileged to help the transition along from past administrations that may have been misguided to hopefully a new dawn. Is that too woefully optimistic?
No, not at all. Because here's the overall point, and a big focus of the efforts. Why this show exists, why, we're a local operation. We bring people in from a national perspective to make the same argument for people to, our hashtag is take it personally. And you clearly take it personally. And that's what's going to have to happen. You've got folks just leaving their computers behind and relegating to be the tool that they are and confronting these issues on a highly personal level. Now, in a sense, you've got wonderful attorneys acting as role models, if you will, because you're new to the legal profession. Attorneys Medina and Lemminger are just outstanding in their efforts on behalf of countless situations. And you've, Shauna Curlin now, by the way, now do you understand why Shauna looks tense a lot?
No, she's gorgeous.
No, but she's tense.
She's gorgeous.
Because there's times when I've seen her just, because you're going to run. It's important that you're optimistic because that will be the fuel, all right, to push you through these cases where you're constantly running into these brick walls. And sometimes the worst part is when the brick wall comes from a source or a place that was wholly unanticipated by people that you thought were, at least on a philosophical level, your partners, or at least you were on the same side. And now you just see this wall of government and working to support a criminal justice system that is hopelessly broken. And so I'm older, so I get to be the cynic here, just out of years of just banging my head against, deep is the stupid out there. And it's going to take energy like yours to just continue to fight these issues. Because for everyone who listens to this, who dismisses this as an issue that's solely immigration related, because that happened to be the triggering event, if you will, all right, you will run into this yourself. The government isn't going to suddenly give you the warm embrace of the criminal justice system because, you're white and you live in the burbs. And maybe you can afford the $500 an hour attorney. Guess what? They're not interested in you either. It's just that because the mechanisms of law enforcement are so much more overt in the inner city and disenfranchised and marginalized communities, guess what? They get to run into it more. Stop and frisk is aimed mainly at kids and young people in the hood, and it's not aimed at the drug dealer in E.G., North Kingstown, Cranston West, or Classical. That's the way it is. But what do you think?
Well, I think that in order for this to work, in order for the grand plan of government with the transparency and accountability that legislation like APRA suggests, we have to take it personally. That there's no us and them. There's no, I was born here, you weren't. There can be no substitute for effective counsel in our legal system. There cannot. And so we must hold our government institutions to those guarantees. And if that means, I think it was Henry Ward Beecher said that laws and institutions like clocks must occasionally be cleaned up, wound, and set true to time, I think. And so that is what I'm hoping to do here is get into some of these mechanisms that seem nitty gritty and they seem niche and they seem like they don't apply to everyone, but it's a part of cleaning the mechanism to make sure that the government and our representatives take it personally.
I get the sense that not only has this not frustrated you, I get the sense that not only is it not presenting a roadblock to you, I get the real sense that this has fired you up.
Oh, definitely. There's no better way to motivate me than to tell me, no, sit down.
Has it always been like that? Yeah, but that's great. There are a variety of institutions in this state. This is a very interesting place if you're from the real world, as I know you are. Rhode Island is, it's hard to explain to people who aren't from here or haven't lived here in a long time, but everything happens on such an immediate level. It's such a tiny little universe that I think what you're discovering here is an opportunity to kind of hone your skills wherever. And quite frankly, we need folks like you in Rhode Island, so I hope you stay here. But should your experience in your life take you elsewhere, it's an opportunity to see on a very approachable level literally everything that is right about society and that is wrong about our criminal justice system as it stands right now. And so the organization, the spirit of, by the way, of the attorneys who support the ACLU is amongst the finest in the nation, which is fascinating for such a place so small. The resolute stands that folks like Stephen Brown take on these issues is astonishing. When you look at it as projected over the course of time, and I listen. We we're behind you on this. The entire civil rights community is behind you on this, because this projects onto literally every fight that's taking place right now. If in fact they can use arcane mechanisms, if in fact they can use ignorance of the law, if in fact they can use money as a barrier to that true understanding and the true fulfillment of our civil rights and our civil liberties in this state and this country at large, then we're in a lot of trouble, and we're not heading in the right direction. So I want to congratulate you for your efforts, and I know you're doing it along with the ACLU folks, and it's just it's outstanding to see. I hope you'll stay. Do you have any? Tell us as we kind of come to a close here. What are your long-term goals in terms of the law? Have you figured out what you want to do yet, or if there's a pet area you want to go into?
Oh gosh, I get asked this by my professors and my friends all the time, and I think my answer changes from day to day.
Right.
But the constant is that I don't intend to be a wealthy lawyer. I intend to be an accessible lawyer, someone who keeps fighting, who keeps trying her best for people who need it. I believe that if you are in a position to do something, you should. And so social justice advocacy and the law is where I'm headed. What sector? I don't know, but it's a real privilege to be working with the ACLU when I'm just a humble law student myself, to be getting this perspective of being a plaintiff in a case, which a lot of attorneys don't ever experience. It's very humbling, and so I intend to keep going forward with social justice.
No, that's outstanding, and I know that the immigration clinic at RWE has done some outstanding work. We've had folks on from there on here. You're in the heart of the storm here, and that's the part of the special, if you will, one of the special facets of going to college, going to school here in Rhode Island, and getting your honing your skills. What's the next step here in the litigation? What happens next? Have they formally filed a suit?
Yes. So we have filed a complaint, but that was only on Friday. So the AG's office, Neronha, in his capacity as the Attorney General, has a bit of time to respond to the complaint that was lodged, and then we take it from there. So for now, we wait.
There you go. Well, first of all, if you could do us a favor here from the show and say hi to Deborah Gonzalez, the director over there at the Immigration Law Clinic. She's outstanding, and she's been on the show. So we've had most of the people in your. it's kind of funny. Most of the folks that you've been surrounded with, if they haven't been, we want them to come on the show. And I hope you'll keep us apprised of this. This is, just separating, and I know you're not doing it for this reason, but being involved at this sort of this level, if you will, in litigation like this is going to be an incredible experience for you in terms of just not only your outlook but also your ability to practice law. And so keep us in the loop as how this case proceeds. Make them squeal. Make them cry like babies, make them do jumping jacks in front of you. Just engage in whatever, unnecessary force, if you will, in the re-education of the Rhode Island Attorney General's office is fully authorized. Okay, how about that? But again, congratulations, and it's got to be the talk. I mean, it's got. Let me ask you this: on those few moments when you can get together with your friends, given everything that's going on right now at law school, and I can't even imagine how study groups work. Do you Zoom study groups? Who knows? It's got to be quite the conversation for, like I said, for someone who's a second-year law student to be taking on, because you're taking on an attorney general for a state here in the United States. What do you? I'm just curious. What do your friends say in terms of light conversation about this?
There's been a lot of holy
You can say it.
goodness. What are you doing? But also a lot of real excitement and support from my community at Roger Williams. I like to think that for the law school at Roger Williams, someone got a bunch of freedom fighters together and just said, let's make a law school. And so it's been really actually nice to finally be able to open up and say, I'm doing a thing, and be open with my friends and have them support me. It's a wild ride, but I've only encountered support, and that's just been wonderful.
Excellent. Well, first of all, thank you for joining us tonight. And I know this is a very busy time for you, and we're going to share this everywhere because it's the term role model comes to mind, and I'll just leave that hanging out there. Lindsay Koso, she's a second-year law student at Roger Williams University School of Law. She is challenging the state of Rhode Island and the Attorney General and and if you will, Peter Neronha, and their, I'll call it with air quotes, selective interpretation, selective reading, gross intellectual bankruptcy. That's my words, not hers. And their interpretation of APRA and all that it entails. We're going to, as we do with all our ACLU cases, it is my divine hope that sometime this spring you'll come on the show and do a victory lap. Okay?
Sounds great.
Have a wonderful evening. We are the Coalition, out loud and proud. Sorry. Civilly Disobedient Media, broadcasting live on the worldwide Coalition Radio Network at coalitionradionetwork.com. Professional, huh? Facebook.com/The Coalition Radio, on the mighty Twitter at Coalition Radio _radio. And of course, our original mothership where you can find interviews with people like Stephen Brown at coalitionradio.us. This show will be up on the YouTube, and we'll be sharing it everywhere, including around the Libertarian Nation and Progressive Nation, starting tomorrow. Folks, the key word tonight, the key hashtag with everything that's going on, this is an obvious example of someone, as we like to say, taking it personally, but doing so in a lot of ways under the most difficult circumstances, under a lot of duress, with a lot of things happening in the legal system. But it's important that we stick to the basics. It's important that we take lessons like this and move forward with them. Have a wonderful night, and we'll see you tomorrow night, 7 o'clock ramp. Tina Peterson joins us. She's going to have Dr. Chan from the Rhode Island Department of Health talking about, of course, COVID, talking about accessibility issues and how the COVID can help and hinder and handicap and challenge the folks who are facing physical challenges. We'll see you tomorrow night.